And we welcome you to this edition of Moral Side of the News. I'm Reed Yadon with WHAS 11. Sean Kalin has the week off, well-deserved we might add, but we carry on. In the hot summertime, we have some hot topics we'll be discussing here with our expert panel, all set to go. Let me introduce them to you. First of all, on my far right, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches. Always good to see Dr. John Slider here.
Thank you.
Retired pastor, Free Methodist Church. Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, and Rabbi Stan Miles. Good to see all of you. Rabbi Stan Miles is with the Louisville Melton School. Well, needless to say, there's always controversy to talk about, and this one is kind of a hot topic. We begin this week with the controversy surrounding the 9/11 plea deal. That was a plea deal that 2 days later, the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin revoked the deal.
Overnight, a stunning reversal. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin revoking the controversial plea deal for the alleged mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks and two of his accomplices, putting the death penalty back on the table. In a surprise memo to retired Brigadier General Susan Escalier, who approved the deal, Austin saying he was taking over responsibility for the cases, writing, "In light of the significance of the decision, responsibility for such a decision should rest with me." The move comes just 2 days after the Pentagon announced it had reached a plea deal with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his accomplices Walid bin Attash and Mustafa al-Hassawi. That deal would have seen them plead guilty to the murder of nearly 3,000 direct victims in exchange for life in prison, avoiding the death penalty. The decision sparking outrage from many.
On Wednesday, when I learned about the deal, it was a gut punch because that came out of nowhere. We weren't expecting it, and we just learned about it on the news. Nobody had notified us properly.
Terry Strada's husband was killed on 9/11. He was on the 104th floor of the North Tower that morning. She is now national chair of 9/11 Families United, relieved when she heard about the reversal late Friday.
I was completely shocked. It came as a huge surprise, and I'm very grateful. I'm happy about this decision because justice needs to be served, and now I believe it will.
Okay, panel, I'd like to have your thoughts on it. A lot of thoughts on this controversial deal. How do you see it playing out? What is fair justice for the victims and families of 9/11? Whoever wants to pick it up and run with it.
I've got a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Very simple. What was the point of a plea deal in this case 23 years almost after the fact? I don't understand. But what I do understand somewhat is the pain that these families, the families of the survivors, the families of those brave beyond belief first responders went through, and the first responders who survived, who died because of what they were exposed to when they came down to the World Trade Center site. I don't want to see them have any more grief or stress more than they already have had, which is too much already.
From the representative of the I don't know, survivors group or the families of survivors group, just taking a cue off of her, it seemed like this was an important thing, at least for the people she was representing. I question the issue. I mean, life versus the death penalty is kind of a wash to me. Maybe the government felt that they were risking acquittal. I just don't know. Why Secretary Austin yanked this away just a couple of days ago is surprising, but then again, we're in the political season, and that may have some coloring on his decision. Taken at face value, I like it, and I applaud him putting that back on the table.
See, I don't have the experience of ever being involved in litigation that would require going to trial. Mm-hmm. And I do know people who have been in those situations, and I do know sometimes when plea deals are arranged, sometimes it's to say that the information is here, we all understand it, but we just as soon not put it all out there in the public. That's sometimes why a plea deal might be reached. Sometimes it might also be because they don't want to drag, and I use that as a choice verb on my part, drag people through that whole experience all over again. So sometimes, plea deals are, I think, arranged in a way that it's to help the healing process going forward. But anytime I would think you're in a other type of litigation situation, the people affected are totally consulted, and that's part of what I think the mother, the wife that was expressing, she felt so blindsided and was not caught in that process. But there may be some things, and I thought that I've seen some allusions to, in our intelligence that they would just as soon not reveal publicly. There's lots of things about this story that we don't know all the story about, but on the other hand, maybe that would be best for our country to get it all out.
I'm glad you mentioned best for our country. I don't know the details of the plea deal, but I do know this seems to be the focus of this plea rests on the concerns of the immediate family members of the 3,000 that died in the immediate effect of the blast at the World Trade Centers. Of course, the victims of that attack goes far beyond the 3,000.
Oh, yes.
There's a reverberating effect for all of us. It's we the people. The country was affected by this attack in very real ways that is yet to be fully measured and accounted for. So it's not just the 3,000 surviving members of the families affected, it's all those of us who are citizens of America that were also affected by this attack. We sometimes forget, as far away we get from an incident, things get a little foggier, a little cloudier, but we got to keep in mind that the moment immediately after that attack, America was drastically transformed. It had a comparable impact of the COVID epidemic. It really affected everything. Our psyche, our emotions, our economy, everything was just totally thrown into a tizzy after that attack. So we all were affected, and many of us never recovered. You had airlines that never recovered at all from that attack, industries that were affected and so forth. So I think that I applaud the action of Lloyd Austin. For whatever reason, he took it off the table. I guess he had the right to do that, but it was an issue of life or death. And sometimes life is sometimes harder than the act of being executed sometimes. So, but I wanted to say that the effects of the original attack 9/11 was far beyond the lives of the 3,000 that lost in that attack.
Well, before we move on to the next topic, I do think, Dr. Slatter, I think your comment is valid about it is a political season. You have to factor that in. And Father Bill, I think you had a valid comment too. There may be classified data here that they were afraid may come out. The thing may be put back together. I don't think we're done with it. I think it may be put back together or something may happen going forward.
Well, I think also, and it's been alluded to in little ways, that life in prison is not real life.
No.
And so
It's more of existence.
yes,
Right.
but there's a cost involved in that. But I do also raise the position that the sacredness of all human life, even those who are perceived as being evil or something like that, but still, all human life has a value, and I don't want to get to the point of discounting that this person has no more right to life than someone else. We do believe in punishing for evil and confronting evil, and there's, to my mind, that's one of the most evil things that have happened in my lifetime, and it is worthy of a severe punishment. But I think there are those who can question whether a more severe punishment actually might be life in prison.
Right.
Let's
Let's move on to another topic that is much talked about, and that is to the Russia multi-nation prisoner exchange.
Tonight, the 3 Americans wrongfully detained by Russia in San Antonio, Texas, grateful to be back on American soil.
I'm glad I'm home, yeah. I'm never going back there again.
The military explaining what's next for them at Brooke Army Medical Center.
We'll spend some time here at Joint Base San Antonio, really doing some medical checks, make sure everything's good.
There will be physical checkups, mental health support, and the time needed to decompress. It comes after the largest, most complicated prisoner swap since the Cold War. Once the Americans were safely on their way home, the president connecting them with their families.
I miss you so much. We're in the Oval Office.
Then, just before midnight, the emotional homecoming at Joint Base Andrews. Paul Whelan, who had spent nearly 6 years in a Russian prison, finally back in the U.S. Journalist Alsu Kurmasheva running to embrace her family, reunited on her daughter's 13th birthday. And Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich hugging his mother and lifting her off the ground.
What about the show of support? Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Gershkovich was falsely accused of spying in a sham trial. The Wall Street Journal revealing before he was freed, the young reporter boldly requested an interview with Vladimir Putin, the man behind his imprisonment. At least a dozen Americans remain jailed in Russia, including Mark Fogel, a teacher serving 14 years for possession of marijuana that had been prescribed by an American doctor. His 95-year-old mother shocked that Mark didn't come home.
I thought when they were releasing that many prisoners, one of them would surely be Mark. But it wasn't.
Well, at the same time we celebrate their homecoming of these of our innocent prisoners. At what price did they come home? And what are your thoughts on this leading to more innocent Americans being grabbed and held for hostage in exchange for a high-profile prisoner that we're holding?
It's standard operating procedure when you're dealing with a dictator like Vladimir Putin. You can't expect anything other than that to happen, and sadly, it's going to happen again. And I guess my hope is that that we will be able to effect an exchange of prisoners with as little collateral damage to our position as possible.
My quick evaluation of the last topic, on the surface it looks good. Really stands for this. I mean, I'm glad those individuals have made it back. Sorry for those who haven't been brought back. But the second question is, how much did we give up? Who went to Russia, went back or whatever? And what precedent, Stan, are we setting? Does this just mean somebody else gets nabbed, some other newspaper reporter, if Russia wants somebody else? Exchange. So on the surface, good. Immediately good. Glad to have the people back here, but wondering what the underlying issues are.
Yeah.
You mentioned underlying, there's a lot more to this that the average citizen just wouldn't be a clue
sure.
to. I mean, the fact that it involved multinational countries. I mean, this is just not a checker move. This is chess.
Right.
Yeah.
At the highest level. I mean, they're moving 10 moves ahead. But it does speak to the timing of it. A lot of it has to do with politics, I believe. With Putin, everything with him is calculated. We know that to be true. And the fact that he did it now versus waiting later on the outcome of the election could have had something to do with it. I'm old enough to remember what happened in 1980 with the election of Reagan. Yeah. And Carter and the Iran situation, and it was delayed just enough, so that it could be viewed in light of the Reagan victory, in the election. So that could have been a part of the calculus of this whole swap. I don't know what it really means to the average citizen in America. Is it going to change?
Careful if you travel anytime you leave this country, be careful.
But that's the point. Yeah. I would hope that the State Department, at this point in time, will say to anyone who wants to go to Russia for any reason, even as benign as tourism, beware, we cannot, once you are over there, you're basically on your own, and we can't help you if you get into a jam.
Yeah.
And when you think of, throughout war, generally prison exchanges are based on just sheer numbers. You know, we've got 100 fighters and you've got 100 of our fighters, we exchange 100 for 100 or whatever that may be in that kind of typical prisoner exchange process as has been practiced, you know, throughout history. But I do think that there is always a potential precedent, which you've all mentioned, that not only in Russia, but there's other countries that are very aggressively opposed to the United States. And if they see this now works, then that becomes a potential thought, well, maybe we can work a deal too. We can get some of our best people home if we just arrest a couple innocent people and throw them in jail and then start the negotiations to get our people home to who have been doing violent, you know, evil or something like that. So I do think it's a fair question. I just think that whatever we need to do to get our people home, we need to do. Fair enough.
Right.
But to know that, as I think alluded to, if you're traveling not only to Russia, but there's other countries we could put on that list.
Sure.
If you're going to travel to these countries, know that you are traveling at risk and that our State Department cannot guarantee you, safety. And particularly if you do get arrested, we certainly cannot imagine or guarantee justice.
Well, and you put your finger on the moral dilemma.
Yes.
How much value? How do you balance the values for those particular individuals versus the potential risks and harm that may be done to a greater number? So it's a difficult issue.
You know, I'm thinking about, I was a big James Bond fan. You remember the movie From Russia with Love?
I'm not that old, Clay.
I know, it was a great Elijah. But it was a very popular movie. It was one of the more popular early James Bond movies, of course. It was John Kennedy's favorite novels. But back then, it was a whole Cold War deal, and I think the mechanics of that particular movie dealt with the James Bond, of course, who was a British spy who happened to get involved in some romantic liaison with a Russian, as I recall, but it really didn't involve the United States, as I recall at the time. But it was a romantic, exotic mystery, but it was called From Russia with Love. That was the title that just lasted. And this could be another way Russia showing a little love, trying to show some sympathy, goodwill in the nation with all that's going on in Ukraine. Maybe he's trying to just untaint his image just a smidgen to appear more loving in the world stage. I don't know, but it could be something that's.
I think he got some real prizes back that he really wanted back pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. You mean like the assassin?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on to a little lighter topic here. Very important though, and very interesting. It's the Olympics. Huge congrats go out to Manual High School graduate Yared Nuguse for his bronze medal performance in the 1500.
The entire room filled with cheers of joy and excitement as Nuguse took home the bronze medal in a tight race. It was a nail-biting finish as former teachers and a coach watch him represent Derby City in Paris.
Congratulations, Yared. We love you. Manual is so proud of you. Yes!
This win has been a long time coming. Nuguse is a former winner of the Kentucky Cross Country State Championship and went on to qualify for the previous Olympics while in college.
If you asked Yared 10 years ago, do you think you'll be running in the Olympics, in 2024, I do not think his answer would have probably been yes. I don't think running was number one on his radar.
A watch party was also held in Louisville's Paristown neighborhood. High school cross country athlete Noah Bamba says it's exciting to see another Louisville native compete.
Me and my coaches and my friends at practice this summer were talking about Yared and just how good he was when he was in high school too. And I was amazed by his times and everything.
Nuguse has a long history of roots in this city, and those who helped plant them remember the kindness he tracked around the school.
I was trying to do 5Ks and I'm, kind of slow and out of shape. And I would be like, my time is down to this. He'd be like, good job, Miss Moss. And he'd always try to encourage me, even though he was, I could never even, I could do a quarter mile in his mile time.
Even after graduating 7 years ago, Nuguse's legacy will ring through the hearts of many. In Louisville, Jose Alonso, WHAS 11 on your side.
A lot of celebrating there, well deserved. A state champion at DuPont Manual, a national champion up at Notre Dame, and now an Olympic medalist, all from Louisville. What a great story. And this young man, I didn't know it, but he didn't even really start running until his PE teacher, Mick Motley, said, I think you should run track. This was after running the mile in PE class. I think this story says, you know, you never know what you say to someone, what impact it can have.
And you can't just automatically categorize people. If there ever was a Kentucky name that's unique and distinct to Kentucky, it's Yared Nuguse. Hearing that name would automatically think about Kentucky. I'm being sarcastic. I'm saying this because you never, our world and community is such an amalgamation of so many different cultures and names now that someone with a name, naturally some cultural connections there, that is as much American as any other name. So I think that is as much a story for me as anything connected with his success in the Olympics.
I think his, obviously the community has embraced him, the schoolmates have embraced him, and very proud of him, regardless of where he came from or what his background is.
It's just a reminder that anybody can succeed, has that potential. Not everybody does succeed.
Right.
Everybody can succeed, and we certainly can highlight, you know, all the different people who are on those big, huge posters on the sides of buildings around town. All, you know, Louisville connected natives, and they have done outstanding things in our nation and in the world. And we remember them, but all of them started in grade school, all of them started in high school, all of them started in college. I mean, we all get our same start, and oftentimes, but it's how we are encouraged, supported, and in a sense push ourselves. I think that's one of the legacies I think will come from this, is hopefully inspire, you know, people to get out there and just simply run, give it their best.
Take it a chance.
Yes.
And read your point about the, or comment about the PE teacher.
Yes.
Encouraging him along. I can't help but think, and let's get moral for a moment, how each of us can have an impact on many people around us who may not get a medal in the Olympics, but you know, a life may be reclaimed or put on the right track or whatever. So you know, look for those opportunities with which God presents us around us in the different lives of people whom we encounter.
Even you, John, weren't you a PE teacher in high school?
No.
You were a track
I was a coach.
But you was an athletic.
Yeah. Well, but everybody has. Thank you, but everybody has encounters like that.
Right.
Parishioners, congregants, people we, you know, just day-to-day basis that we. A pat on the back may be a helpful.
Right. Means a lot.
Yes.
Big door swing on small hinges.
He seems to be a personification of the American dream.
Indeed.
Right. And he was given a chance, and he jumped at that chance. You know, he didn't squander it, and that's an important thing about just life in general. We are all given so many chances, and continue to be, regardless of our age. I mean, you can certainly be very limited physically, but you're still given chances to impact other people's lives, and to find ways to do that. Earlier today, I was at an assisted living place, and to see the interaction between some of those residents when they saw each other, because they don't often get to see each other, you know, because we were gathered together for a worship service. So some of these people were kind of gathered together, and they recognized each other, but so just those moments to make that impact in somebody else's life, you know, other images, ripple effect that it happens, and we don't know it until we start that process.
Clay, I like your comment. Big doors swing on small hinges.
Yes.
Hey, that says it all.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn to the topic of schools now. The school is back in session as this is being recorded. It is done so on a Thursday, and there were problems earlier in the day on Thursday with getting people to school, thousands of students, transportation issues there, but there's also another issue as we begin the school year. We do so with a significant shortage of teachers.
Staffing shortages are plaguing schools across the country, and Hudson Middle and the Academy at Shawnee are no exception. According to their website, JCPS is currently looking to fill an array of different positions, including 98 positions for K-12 teaching. Other jobs include substitutes, housekeeping, and security. But Cynthia says it isn't what it seems.
The number of those postings do not necessarily reflect the number of actual vacancies for a variety of reasons, but yes, they do show areas of need in the district.
JCPS says the high enrollment is due to the new student assignment plan that started last year. Now families in West Louisville are able to decide where their student goes to school. The downside to more students filling the hallways, needing more teachers in an already struggling market. JCPS is bringing in some help.
Teachers are trained in different areas, different subject matters, but they are certified teachers who are able to give a high level of support to any school that uses them.
While the first day of school is just 2 days away with a large gap to fill, those interested in working for JCPS should apply.
And we encourage anybody to apply for any of those positions and to search for others. If you're not a fit for one, we can find you maybe a position in another place.
Okay, and I do want to emphasize the problem on Thursday morning, at least, was so many students that used to ride the bus, they're now being transported by car, and there was a lot of traffic jams and so on. I think the bus side of it went pretty smooth. Now, I want your thoughts on what can be done to get more teachers in the classroom. If we can solve that, we've had a good day.
In Ecclesiastes, I think money answers all things. So you start there. That's a good place to start. It won't be the total answer, but increasing pay, of course, could always help. That's an incentive. I was trained a teacher, and even though I never taught professionally, I used to teach at Shawnee back in the 70s, but I never went into that as a profession. But there's a shortage down there, a severe shortage at Shawnee High School. But starting with compensation packages, incentives is a good place to start.
I hear you, Clay. I would disagree that's the place to start. I think giving teachers and school leaders more the ability to control their classrooms. I didn't teach. I was a coach, and I go into school situations now. I used to be a sub-teacher, and there's some good situations in Jefferson County, and there's some not so good ones. And I think we as adults and adults in the school system have given up so much control to the young people who should be the students and not be in charge of the schools. So I think there's some issues there as well.
One of the things that I haven't heard mentioned, but I'm pondering is that teaching used to be an inspiring profession. It would inspire people. You want to be a professor or teacher. Well, nowadays with social media, with all the podcasts, all the stuff out there, you really don't need teachers. You can put a child in front of a computer and they can learn themselves. That's the perception. I'm not saying it's correct at all. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
But I wonder if that's an factor.
And with that, we're going to close down, unfortunately. Rabbi Stan, Father Bill gets the final word. Always more to talk about here. More time. This is Moral Side of the News. Sean Kalin is back next week. Thank you to Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary Church, St. William Catholic Churches, Dr. John Slider, retired Free Methodist Church, and Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, and Rabbi Stan Miles. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. And as always, thank you for joining us on the WHAS Moral Side of the News.